discussing the journey of Imam Hussein alayhi salam to Kerbala, we reached the stage at Zubala when he gathered all his companions and told them that he had lost his shears in Kufa. Muslim ibn Aqil, Hani ibn Urwa and Qais bin Mashar had already been martyred, and those who wanted to leave him were free to do so. And a number of people did leave him. From there then, from Zubala then, he moved on to Batan al-Aqaba. There he met the sheikh of that village, the sheikh of the tribe of Bani Ikrama. And the sheikh, when he sees the Imam alayhi salam, gets astounded and again comes to receive him and says, Yabna Rasulullah, you being here, this is a great honor for us, but what brings you here? And the Imam alayhi salam again explains that he is on his way to Kufa because Muawiyah has died and the people have invited him to go and lead them and give them guidance. And immediately the Sheikh of Ibn Ikramah says, O grandson of the Holy Prophet, I implore you not to go to Kufa. Kufa is not a place of safety for you anymore. What is waiting for you there are only the points of spears and the edges of swords. If the people in Kufa had already organized an army for you and you were going, I would not have been speaking like this. But in the present situation, according to the news we receive, it is unsafe for you to go there, and I implore you not to. Now, the response of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is worthy of consideration. He turns round to him and says, Oh Shaykh, this wisdom has not been concealed from me. In other words, Allah has vested him with knowledge of all this that is to come. And this wisdom is well within his knowledge too. But he says, what is destined by Allah, glorified and exalted, must occur. These people, even if I did not go to Kufa, wherever I will be, will chase me and will not be content until they remove my heart from the depth of my guts. But, O Shaykh, those who will do so, Allah will subject them to domination and humiliation to such an extent that they will become the most humiliated faction in the nations of the world. That was the prediction Imam Hussein alayhi salam made about his enemies. And we have not known of enemies of Imam Hussein alayhi salam who have not met that sort of fate. Recently, as you know, the son-in-law of Saddam, when the Shias made the uprising in Iraq, the son-in-law of Saddam was kept in charge of the garrison to go and quash that uprising. And I have been told by a number of people when I have had the good fortune of being in Kerbala, that Hussein, the son-in-law of Saddam, brought his tanks facing the shrine of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, because the road was wider there, and from there he was to move on. And from the shrine of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, as you know, you see the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and there are shops. Now some shops have been broken, but at that time there were still shops on both sides of the road. He stood in the middle of the road facing the dome of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and said, Ya Hussein, you are Hussein. I am also Hussein. I am going to attack your followers, and I'm going to attack your shrine also, as it did. He bombed the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, gunfire there, which have now been repaired, alhamdulillah, even damaged part of the dome, if you remember. And then said these strong words. He says, Ya Hussein, I will do so. You are regarded to be strong and powerful. You use your might, I will use my might, and let us see who wins. Can you imagine the audacity of that person to talk like that? And we then said, the people of Iraq have told me this. Indeed, we had heard this even on the net. And we then, all of us said, that the consequences to this son-in-law of Saddam will soon be known to him. I wasn't planning to say this, but as I am on my feet, this occurs to me, and I have set out this episode. And soon we saw that son-in-law had to escape from Baghdad. He went to Jordan. He sought refuge in Jordan. He took Saddam's daughter, who was his wife, with him, and their children, and yet so were the things manipulated by Saddam that the son-in-law became pleased to leave Jordan and return to Baghdad. And you remember that occasion when they were already in Baghdad. Saddam made a party that night, and all of them were there. They were lined up for a photograph. The son-in-law with his wife, with his children. Saddam moves in himself to join in that photograph. Instead of joining in the photograph, he takes out a pistol and shoots them all. Not only did he shoot his son-in-law, he shot his daughter, he shot even his grandchildren. So you can see, Imam Hussein alayhi salam's power is radiant even today. Even today, there isn't a person who can stand up and talk to Imam Hussein alayhi salam like that. And when they do, they may not hear the sound of that whip, but the whip flows and the consequences are dire. That is in this world. What is to happen in the hereafter is still a punishment waiting for them. فِي الدُّنْيَا خِزْيٌ وَفِي الْآخِرَةُ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. That is what Imam Hussein alayhi salam predicted then, that those who will kill me will face humiliation and will face destruction. And indeed, every killer of Imam Hussein alayhi salam has been brought to book, either by Sulaiman bin Surd or, more significantly, by Mukhtar. He had a list of all the killers, and you will be surprised, I have had occasion to speak on Mukhtar in this hall only on a few occasions, but Mukhtar had a list of the killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that he obtained from the historian, from the records keeper of Yazid. Yazid, record keeper, was sent to Kerbala to make a list of every person who kills Imam Hussein alayhi salam, or any person from the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And this is how we have the details of who the killers were. These records were maintained so that Saddam could, I beg your pardon, so that Yazid could reward each of these killers. That list came into the hands of Mukhtar, so he was able to pick on each one of them. Each one of them was arrested, and was painfully killed in this lifetime. Raj'ah is still waiting, the day of judgment is still waiting for their punishment. Well, but this is a prediction Imam Hussein alayhi salam made. It was thought, it was made for those who had immediately killed him, but it appears that his opponents meet this consequence even until today. From Batanul Aqaba, the Imam alayhi salam moves on to Rahima. Nothing of significance there, and I will not detain you on it. Matters of details which I will jump over to take you to Qasr Bani Maqatil. Two important events that I must set out for Qasr Bani Maqatil. First, as the Imam alayhi salam camps at Qasr Bani Maqatil, he sees a huge tent that has already been pitched there. He inquires, and he is told it is this tent of Ubaydullah bin Hur bin Ja'far. So he says, send a word to him that I want to meet him and bring him over to me. I'd like to talk to him. When the messenger of Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes to Ubaydullah, he says, no, I do not want to meet Hussein alayhi salam. It is because I wanted to avoid him that I have left Kufa, and I have pitched here in safety so that I can be left alone. I did not want that I should be in Kufa when Hussein alayhi salam enters Kufa. And I am then sandwiched between joining the forces of Yazid or the forces of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I decided to keep out of all this. I will move out of Kufa, and so I'm here in peace. I do not want to meet him. When the messenger conveys this news to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he personally moves out of his tent to the tent of Ubaidullah. You can see the extent to which mercy flows in the heart of Imam Hussein alayhi salam to give people guidance that they need, to help them save themselves from the fire of hell. He comes into the tent and says to Ubaidullah, my messenger has told me what you have told him, and I do not want to take you into that. But I've come to warn you that if you stay here, then you must make sure you do not go against us. Because if you go against us, there is no accounting for you on the day of judgment. Fire of hell is what will be waiting for you. And I only want to warn you that if you are staying here, then make sure you are not only not here to fight against me, you will not be here even to hear my cry for help. On the day of Ashura, I will announce, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. He who hears that call of mine and does not immediately respond to that call to come and help me, his fate on the day of judgment will be the fire of hell. You can see the predictions of the punishment that Imam Hussein alayhi salam made even before entering Kerbala of the consequences of people fighting him. Tonight is a night we remember that. And so I thought I should, having reached here, set out this hadith to you. And this is why one of the amal we do tonight is to curse the killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. A night of prayer, and I hope I will come back to that subject in due course before I complete. Because this is the night of the eve of Ashura, and that discussion is also important and necessary. However, from there, next morning, the Imam alayhi salam spends night there at Qasr Bani Maqadir. Not the full night, good part of the night. After midnight he moves out. He moves out of Qasr Bani Maqatil, and as he moves, and this is reported in the Maqatil of Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah also, as he is moving, he had Shahzada Ali Akbar this time on his right, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas on his left. And on the way, as he was riding on, he had 40 wings. His eyes closed, and Shahzada Ali Akbar could see that, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas could see that, so they were very careful in guarding him. And as they moved on, suddenly he opened his eyes, and what does he say? He says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Those two verses, so very well known to you, those two verses he repeated, and he repeated them 3 times. Shahzad Ali Akbar immediately turns around to him and says, "Oh father, why this recitation of the verse of returning to Allah, glorified and exalted?" So he says, "Oh my son, suddenly I felt drowsy, and I saw a person on a horse coming from the opposite direction, facing us. And as I looked at him, he turns around and says, 'Here are people moving towards their destiny, moving towards their own deaths.'" And so when I heard those words, I recited this appropriate verse. And Shahzad Ali Akbar turns around and says to his father, "Oh my father, alasna ala al-haq? Aren't we on the right path? Aren't we on the correct decision of doing what we are doing?" And Imam Hussein alayhi salam immediately lifts up his neck and says, "Wallah, by Allah, we surely are." First he takes an oath. Then he gives certainty to his answer. He says, "We surely are." And there is no question or doubt about it. The reply of his son is so glorious. He says, "Oh father, then what does it matter whether we go and pounce on our death or death comes and pounces on us?" And Imam alayhi salam gives him a beautiful answer. He says, "Oh my son, may Allah give you that maximum jaza for these words that any son gets for being of service to his father. So you can see a lesson there, the importance of service to a father. And what jaza Allah glorified and exalted has, and it appears that there are degrees of that jaza, and he prayed for the maximum degrees of reward just for serving your father, and the Imam alayhi salam chose the maximum reward, prayed for the maximum reward to his son, because the response was so important that then they are going to make their sacrifice without hesitation, without a second thought. The son now knowing for sure that they are on the right path, and hence it matters not whether they pounce on death or death pounces on them. And then he moved on until Fajr. He said his prayers and spent the rest of the night there. And spent a few more hours resting at Qasr Bani Maqatil. And from there they went to Sharaf. At Sharaf he ordered water to be gathered. When water was gathered, he asked that more water should be gathered. So he accumulated quite a reservoir of water and carried it with him. As they moved on, at Dhu Hisn, he suddenly finds some of his companions reciting the takbir, Allahu Akbar. He immediately responds back saying Allahu Akbar, and then turns to them and says, what made you recite takbir? What have you noticed? Because that would be the response. Noticing something, the response would be recitation of takbir. And the people who recited takbir said, well, we have seen date palms. The moment they said they'd seen date palms, other companions turned around and say, date palms? There are no date palms in this area at all. We have traversed this area before. At Dhu Hisn, there are no date plants at all. So the Imam alayhi salam turns to them and says, you look around, what do you see? They say, we see ears of horses. The Imam alayhi salam says, that is exactly what I see, and that is more likely. And the Imam takes a militarily strategic decision. He says, before those people surround us all round, we must get to that mountain side of Dhu Hisn, and we must line ourselves up against the mountain so that they are opposite us, and if they attack us, then we are facing the enemy from the front. There is nobody to disturb us on the sides. And so they veered to the left. The moment they veered to the left, those by then, as they veered to the left, they could see the vanguard of the group that was coming. And they also veered to follow where the Imam alayhi salam was leading his party. But the Imam alayhi salam galloped and got to Dhu Hisn and occupied the place and pitched their tents. Soon, when this army that was coming to meet them comes in, the Imam alayhi salam finds Hur there. I wanted to reach Hur so that at least we reach Kerbala tonight before the martyrdom is recited tomorrow. And then on Monday, inshallah, I should be able to take up the loose ends. For example, all that will have happened in Kerbala between the arrival of the Imam in Kerbala and his martyrdom. Those 8 days, what transpired in those 8 days, important matters that occurred then, we would discuss them, and we would discuss a couple of other matters which have been omitted because of time on Monday night. Failing completion of those matters on Monday, we still have Tuesday in hand. Although I was hoping to occupy Tuesday on the subject of the contribution of ladies, being a night dedicated to the mother of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, Ummul Baneen alayha salam. Well, when he sees Hur there, what does the Imam alayhi salam? And Hur salutes the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam replies, and what does he see? He sees the people, the soldiers, are thirsty. It was noon by then. The soldiers were thirsty. The horses were so thirsty indeed. The tongues of the horses were coming out of their mouths. And the first thing the Imam alayhi salam does is to order that water be given to them. Before, the first thing that actually happens is Abu al-Fadl alayhi salam comes to the Imam alayhi salam and says, I have taken an assessment. There are 1,000. If you order, we will pounce on them now. And as we pounce on them, we will finish them all in less than an hour. Then, when a new contingent comes, we only have that number of soldiers to fight. We will have completed this instead of allowing them to aggregate and become larger in numbers when it becomes more difficult for us to meet them. That is the thought that the standard bearer gave to the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam's response was, oh my brother Abbas, don't you see how thirsty they are? Not only they, look at their animals. Give them water first and give them water quickly because they are thirsty. We would turn around and say, yeah, Imam, they've come to kill you. If they can die of their own thirst, then you are not even responsible for their deaths. The Imam alayhi salam says, I am a successor of Rahmatun lil Alameen. His grandfather was a mercy for all worlds. He, to be a true Imam, acts in the feet of that Rahmatun lil Alameen. And one can see this exposure of the Imam alayhi salam in his true capacity as a representative of Allah, in his true capacity as an Imam appointed by Allah, glorified and exalted, and not by human beings. And in that capacity you can see he acts at the peak of those makarimul akhlaq, and orders that water should be given. Water is served to all the 1,000 soldiers. That is why the reservoir is taken. Can I request the salawats to welcome Maulana who is just arrived? Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Aapki ijazat Maulana. So water is served to all those 1,000 soldiers. When they have quenched their thirst, the Imam orders that all the horses now should also be given big water. And when all the horses were given water, he turns to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam and says, oh my brother, look at the feet of these horses. In this heat, their feet are burning, splash water even on the feet of these horses. That was the mercy. That was the generosity with which Imam Hussein alayhi salam acted even at Dhu Hisn with people he knew, he recognized to be his die-hard enemies, with people who were there to kill him if they did not follow their instructions. Indeed, that specimen of his father, of milk being given to Abdurrahman ibn Muljam, you can see is being repeated by the son in Dhu Hisn. This is the consistency one finds in the behavior of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when that was all over, it was time for prayers. The Imam alayhi salam does not indulge in any speeches. The call for prayer is made. Once the call for prayer has been made, before Iqamah starts, the Imam alayhi salam comes out of his tent. He comes out, now he's dressed in a cloak and sandals, and makes his first speech. The first speeches that the Imam alayhi salam made to the armies of Yazid were to the army of Hur. And this is what gave Hur the opportunity to get close to the Imam alayhi salam, or if not to get close to him, at least to be in the company of the Imam alayhi salam. And I have said this at the risk of repetition because of its importance, and because tonight is the eve of Ashura and tomorrow is the day of the ziyarah of Ashura. I repeat to say, we recite these ziyarahs of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in order to establish our companionship with the Imam alayhi salam. Because in that nexus, in that connection with the Imam alayhi salam, mercies flow on us, spirituality grows in us in a manner that we cannot otherwise conceive. However, he stands up for Iqamah and turns first to the army of Hur and says that before I start my salah, there is one thing I want to explain. I want to explain that I am here because you have called me here. I would not have come here on my own accord. You wrote me letters. You did not even call me verbally. I have documentary evidence to establish that you have invited me to you. And it is because you have invited me, I am here. It is now your duty to do what a host does to a guest. But if you have changed your minds, if you now think differently from what you thought before, tell me so candidly. And if you show that you are withdrawing your invitation to me, I shall go back to where I came from. And he paused. When he paused, there was dead silence. There was deafening silence. There was not even a response from her or from anybody in the army of her. And the next thing that the Imam alayhi salam does is he proceeds on. Iqama is recited. When Iqama is finished, the Imam alayhi salam turns to Hur and says, Hur, are you going to lead prayers for your followers? Will they pray behind you? And Hur says, no, Ya ibn Rasulillah. You lead the prayers, we all will say our prayers behind you. You can see the importance, the dignity, the significance of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This is a point I made a couple of nights back and repeated it perhaps, because at every station we have seen the Imam alayhi salam receiving the respect of the people, receiving importance from the people, and being treated as the sacrosanct grandson of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny. And as I said, history judges a personality from the way his contemporaries judged him. And this is how you see it. Hur, who was there to harass Imam alayhi salam, indeed to arrest him, to apprehend him, as we shall soon see, instead says, if it comes to prayer, you lead the prayers and we will pray behind you. The Imam alayhi salam gave him an option, did not give him an option whether you pray or you do not pray. And I wish to emphasize this to the youths. He did not say, if you wish to pray. He asked her, are you leading them? And will your followers recite behind you? Because there was no question of whether to recite salah or not insofar as the Imam alayhi salam was concerned. The question was only who was going to be the Imam of that jama'ah. And they decided to pray behind Imam alayhi salam. The Imam led the prayers and all of them recited their prayers behind the Imam alayhi salam. After prayers, Dhuhr passed, the Imam alayhi salam went into his tent, Hur went into his tent. Time for Asr comes, the Imam alayhi salam comes out and says, it is time to go, but let us recite our prayers first. Adhan is recited. This time Iqama follows immediately, and the Imam alayhi salam leads prayers, and the army of Hur prays behind the Imam alayhi salam once again. When that salah is over, the Imam alayhi salam stands up to address them. And he turns around to them and said, I have mentioned to you why I am here. I am here because you invited me and you are responsible for my presence here. He repeats this in Kerbala on the day of Ashura, in his khutbah of Ashura also. And then he says, we, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, have been appointed by Allah and indeed have the right as the Ahlul Bayt, as the successors of the Holy Prophet, as the descendants of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, to have rights over you and to have the wilaya, the right of authority and guardianship of the ummah. And that by adopting that wilaya, you will get more satisfaction and you will get more reward and nearness to Allah, glorified and exalted, rather than following those who claim the khilafah but have no right to it at all and are not eligible or qualified for those positions. So you can see a direct attack on Yazid. Tonight I may not have time to discuss another speech that the Imam alayhi salam made, but Monday night inshallah I should draw your attention to it so that we get the exact words of the Imam alayhi salam on this point. But he made this point at Dhu Hism, saying they have no right to be there to be successors of the Imam of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his progeny, because they do not qualify. They do not have the qualities for the imamah to guide and lead an ummah which can follow their guidance and leadership. And hence he turns around to them and says, you cannot follow them, and it's a dire mistake to follow such leaders. Indeed, I am here, as I said, because of the letters you have written to me. Hur stands up to reply for the first time and says, "O grandson of the Prophet, you are talking of these letters. We have not written them. We know nothing about these letters." And maybe Hur himself did not know anything, being in Syria at that point in time, perhaps. Says, "We know nothing about these letters." The Imam alayhi salam says that is not a matter of difficulty to prove, and asks his assistant to produce the letters. 2 complete saddle bags are brought of letters. All those letters that the Imam alayhi salam had received in Kufa, he carried with him. He produced them at Dhu Hisn, he produced them again in Kerbala in one of his speeches, when he was challenged to do so. And indeed, he picked up the correct letters and showed the people who were challenging him in Kerbala and who were then in Kerbala saying, "Isn't this your signature? Aren't you the person who wrote this letter to me?" Proving beyond hilt that his going to Kufa was not for power, was not for any worldly gain. It was only to respond to the call of people wanting guidance from an imam. So when Hur says this, that these letters are there, he changes the subject and turns around and says, "Yes, but we are not people who wrote those letters." Irrelevant whether you were the people who wrote those letters or not. Your compatriots, your fellow citizens wrote those letters, and they're binding on you, because the Imam alayhi salam has now come on the strength of a numerous number of your fellow citizens who have written these letters. However, Hur does not let that line of discussion proceed. He says, we have not written these letters, and we are not the people who invited you. All I am here for is that I have orders from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad to make sure that I take you with me to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa. So that was his terms of reference, and he unfolded it. He exposed that the terms of reference so clearly. He said, "I'm supposed to take you, go along with you to Kufa, to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad." So we know the strategy of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad now, to take Imam Hussein alayhi salam to Kufa, so that Kufa being under his authority, he can subject him to any oppression that he wanted to, and perhaps in a way that the public may not be fully aware of them, and yet under guard, under soldiers surrounding him, so that he has no access to the people of Kufa at all. The Imam alayhi salam gave an answer which was phenomenal. He turns around and says, "Oh Hur, you will be dead before you can achieve that." What a solemn threat that sounded at that time. But the Imam alayhi salam knew what was to come. He knew that Hur would give his life for the Imam alayhi salam. And before the Imam could be taken to Kufa, Hur would be dead. What will go to Kufa was not the body of the Imam alayhi salam, but only the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And that head also will perform its wonders and its miracles in Kufa. If there will be time on Tuesday night, we will touch on that subject. When the Imam alayhi salam says he'll be dead by then, he ignores Hur altogether, turns to Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam and says, "Let us march on." And everybody started to mount. They waited for the ladies to mount, and they moved on. As they moved on, Hur saw what the Imam alayhi salam was doing, so he came in the path. So you can see, this is what made Hur so guilty about having brought the Imam alayhi salam to Kerbala. This is the first step. He intervenes in the path of the Imam alayhi salam and says, "No, not that way. If you veer to the left." And the Imam alayhi salam says, "What do you want? When the Imam asks him, what do you want? He turns around and, when he comes in the path of the Imam alayhi salam, the Imam alayhi salam turns to him and says, "Thaqalatku ummak," may your mother weep over you. Means, may you be dead. And on first sight, one sees this as a threat, as strong words used against him. But the Imam alayhi salam does not. It was in fact a dua for Hur, that may his mother weep over him after he becomes a sacrifice, or Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and finds Jannah for himself. After the Imam alayhi salam says, "Anta hurrun fid dunya wal akhirah," you are free now from the agonies of the world and from the tortures and torments of the hereafter. You are now a man of paradise and are to move on straight to paradise. So the Imam alayhi salam says, may your mother weep over you. He turns round to the Imam alayhi salam, golden words of Hur for the first time. He turns round and says, O grandson of the Holy Prophet, if a person other than you had told me this, I would not have parted from him without saying, and may your mother weep over you. But how can I say that of your mother? Your mother, the illustrious illustrious daughter of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, how can I utter her name except in virtue and in glory to that illustrious lady? When the Imam hears these words, he turns round and says to him, now what do you want? And Hur says, all I want is that you come with me to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa. And the Imam alayhi salam says, by God, wallah, that I will never do. I will never follow you to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa. And Hur turns around and says, well then, I will not allow you to go anywhere else. The Imam alayhi salam repeats, I will not come with you to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. This is repeated 3 times. And when it is repeated 3 times, and Hur says that the Imam alayhi salam is adamant, Hur realized that the next action must be to battle it out with the Imam alayhi salam. And he saw that the Imam alayhi salam was ready for a battle. But the Imam alayhi salam would rather have avoided it in Dhu Hisn. He was to achieve this in Kerbala for excellent reasons, which we have already discussed last Friday night. So Hur says, Yabna Rasulillah, let us reach a compromise. Take a road that neither goes to Kufa nor to Madina, and I will come along with you. In the meantime, I'm writing an urgent letter to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, setting out the situation to him. And maybe, again, important words of Hur, maybe Allah will open up an avenue for me whereby I will not need to take any steps against you. So you can see Hur from the word go, just those few minutes that he had with the Imam alayhi salam. And I cast your mind back to how Zuhair bin Qayn in a few minutes turned his thoughts altogether. Hur now is beginning to take a definite view that he cannot take any steps against the grandson of the Holy Prophet. And so he turns around and says, maybe Allah will open up avenues for him. And Allah is so merciful. When a person so sincerely turns to Allah, glorified and exalted, Allah is Tawwabur Rahim. He turns to that person with mercy and opens up the avenues of peace for Hur. And for Hur personally though. So when Hur says this, the Imam alayhi salam says, yes, that is acceptable to me. Now they are traveling together. And Hur turns round to the Imam alayhi salam and says, Yabna Rasulillah, I am very much concerned about your life. You must do something about this, because otherwise they will take your life. And that concerns me. The Imam alayhi salam turns to him and says, Hur, are you threatening me with death? Here is a person who is out for martyrdom. He cannot be threatened with death. But those words shows that the Imam alayhi salam was not going to kill and get power. He was going to get killed and spread Islam. Because that was the way Islam was going to be spread. So he turns around to Hur and says, do you threaten me with death? And repeats a poetry in Arabic in which he says, when a brother warned a brother of the hard consequences of the action he was taking, the brother says, so long as I am on righteousness, so long as I am doing on the right thing, I will continue to do so, even if death was to meet me. Because if I succeed, I will thank Allah and I will have been successful. High trust, his trust in Allah, to the extent that Hur could not cope with it and separated from the Imam alayhi salam. He had enough of that cup from the wisdom of the Imam alayhi salam. He remained aside until they moved on, and they came to a town where the Imam alayhi salam paused for a while, and then from there they moved on and they came to Nineveh. When they came to Nineveh, the Imam alayhi salam stops there and says to Hur, let us stop here. And Hur says, no, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we cannot stop here, because my orders are that I should not stop with you at a place where there is vegetation, where there is habitation, and there is habitation here, so we must move on from here. In the meantime, a messenger comes from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and gives a letter to Hur from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Hur reads the letter and shows the letter to the Imam alayhi salam immediately. He has now no secret from the Imam alayhi salam. The letter says, O Hur, if you have already found Hussein and Hussein is with you, then make sure that you do not let him go. Take him to a place where there is no vegetation, where there is no habitation, and park there, and I will send further orders. When that order reaches, then Imam alayhi salam says, well, let us go to Qadisiyah. And Hur says, there is habitation there, there is vegetation there, and we cannot move to those places. Indeed, one of the persons from the army of the Imam alayhi salam recognizes the messenger and says, you were with us, what has made you turn? He says, I have made bay'ah to my Imam and I'm following the Imam. And he's recited that ayah of the Quran and says there are two types of Imams. There is an Imam who leads to heaven, and that is Hussein alayhi salam. And there is an Imam that leads to hell, and that's Yazid. So if you make the bay'ah of the Imam who leads to hell, you know now that you are going towards hell, because you are out to obtain the murder of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. The messenger was not able to respond to that, but you can see the enthusiasm of the truth with which they proceeded on this journey, and they veered towards Kerbala. In Kerbala, as you know, the Imam alayhi salam changed from horse to horse. When he could not move, when the horses would not move, the Imam alayhi salam pronounces that even the animals on which I ride know my destination, and I have reached my destination and paused there. That was then Kerbala that we have already discussed about last week. The Imam alayhi salam remained there until the eve of tonight arrived. The intervening period, inshallah, we shall discuss on Monday, where this night arrived, the night of Ashura. And indeed, that was a night when Yazid wanted to start the battle. And indeed a contingent came to the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Abul Fadl al-Abbas rushes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says, they seem to be ready to attack us, and a contingent has arrived. What are your orders? Shall we start? Shall we fight? And the Imam alayhi salam says, no, the first arrow will not come from me. Indeed, this is an expression that the Imam used for Zuhair bin Qayn when they were at Nineveh, and that messenger came from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Zuhair bin Qayn came to the Imam alayhi salam and repeated the advice of Abul Fadl al-Abbas, independently of course, saying, Mawla, these are only 1,000 people here. Allow us to fight them and we'll finish them now, rather than allowing them to accumulate in numbers and we have greater numbers to fight later on. The Imam alayhi salam says, the first arrow will not come from my camp. He was there to defend himself if need be. He will not start the battle. More analysis on Monday, inshallah. I must move on because Laylatul Ashura has already come in. The eve of Ashura has already come in. The Imam alayhi salam replies to Abu Fadl Abbas and says, oh my brother, tell them that now it is already eve. Tell them to allow us just this one night so that I get one more night to worship Allah. You can see how dear the worship of Allah was to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and even says it to the enemy. So he says it, he says, so that nusalli alayhi wa nad'uh wa nastaghfiruh, so that we have one more night to worship Allah and to recite salah for him. Hence the importance of salah tonight. And this is why tonight we not only make azah. Indeed, azah is vital for tonight. That is the great ibadah of Allah, to mourn and grieve over Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the great thawab for it. And we make matam tonight because it is a night of matam, but we also worship Allah. And we do all those three things that the Imam alayhi salam mentioned. Nusalli alayh, we worship him, we do the formal prayer. Indeed, for tonight, as you know, 100 rakat are advised. The amal for tonight is 100 rakat, and in each of those rakats, 3 Qul Huwallahu Ahad, and then 70 tasbih, including the tasbihat arba, and including istighfar. So that istighfar is done, and indeed Allah is supplicated, and He is worshipped by way of salah. The thawab given for that salah is Allah forgives you your sins. And what wonder that Allah may forgive in the name of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. 4 rakat namaz are advised. In each rakat 50 Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Call it the namaz of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Call it the namaz of Bibi Fatima alayha salam. The meaning is the same. The two are the same personalities. But that is the salah. Another 4 rakat namaz with 10 times of Ayat al-Kursi, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, all the 4 Quls, and 100 Qul Huwallahu Ahad at the end of those. All those prayers for tonight, because it is indeed a night of prayer, because Hussein alayhi salam asked for that night for prayer. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam gathered his companions. You can see this hero of Kerbala acting in a heroic fashion. You can see he is not after government, he is not after power. He gathers now people who refuse to go away from him. At Zubala he said, go, and many went. These are people who remained with him. And the Imam alayhi salam makes a speech. There is no time to say what the contents of the speech, but at least say this much to you, that he removed their bay'ah from them and said, go away from here. These people are thirsty of my blood. They will let you go, and it is darkness of the night. And if you are ashamed, I will put off the candle in the darkness. Go away. And somebody said, Ya Hussein, we go away, and our people tell us that we ran away from you. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I'm only saying it to show the expanse of the mercy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That grandson, that true successor of Rahmatun lil Alameen, turns round to him and says, I will give you one of my daughters. I will give you one of my small sons. You can take him along to Madina. And said, I did not run away. Hussein alayhi salam asked me to reach this daughter to his house in Madina. You can see the limit of the mercy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The first reply that comes from Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. He turns around and says, oh my master, if I was killed 1,000 times and revived 1,000 times, I will still remain with you and die in your cause 1,000 times. There is no life in this world without Hussein alayhi salam. I commend these words to you tonight. I repeat those words to you and ask you to absorb them and assimilate them in yourselves, and say to yourselves and say to the world, there is no life in this world without Hussein alayhi salam. If there is no majlis of Hussein alayhi salam, if there is no ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, if there is no weeping on Hussein alayhi salam, there is no life in this life. This is a teaching of Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. And indeed, Zuhair bin Qayn stands up and makes a similar speech. And this is why on the next day, from dawn, Imam Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam turns to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says, Mawla, let me go and fight. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam would say, you are the standard bearer. How can I let you go so soon? Indeed, that time comes when all the companions have gone. And now even the relatives, the near relatives have been sacrificed. He comes to the Imam alayhi salam and says, where is the army, O my master, that I should now wait for? And the Imam alayhi salam says, Abbas, you and I will fight together. And soon Sakina comes with a water skin and says, Uncle, I am so thirsty, dear, the children are so thirsty. Get us some water from Furat. The Imam alayhi salam looks at Abbas alayhi salam, and Abbas alayhi salam looks at the Imam alayhi salam. They both saw in the request of Sakina the martyrdom of Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. Until he becomes ready and is allowed to go, the Imam alayhi salam removes the sword and leaves the spear. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam says, Mawla, you are removing my sword. And the Mawla says, yes indeed, you don't need the sword. You're not going to fight, you're only going to bring water. Only with the spear, Abul Fadl Abbas jumped into the rows. Well, it was not merely a question of a spear, because rows of soldiers were planted on Furat so that the water of Furat does not get to the camp of Imam Hussein. To stop access to the camp, rows of soldiers had been lined up. Abbas alayhi salam tore into that rows only with his spear, gained control on the banks of Euphrates, entered Euphrates. But when his horse was now in the water, filled up the water skin of Bibi Sakina alayhi salam, turned to his horse and says, oh my horse, you can drink the water, you are thirsty. This water is haram on me until Sakina gets water from this much. But you can drink water. Every drop of Furat will bear evidence that Abbas entered into Furat thirsty and left Furat totally thirsty. That is the credential of Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, of loyalty to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, of his dignity, of his nobility, and of his true essence of being the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Indeed, from there he marched out. Now the prayer to Allah, oh Allah, reach me to the tent, reach this water to Sakina. Whatever happens to me, let this water reach Sakina. You have always helped me fulfill the wishes of Sakina. This is the last request I may be making. Let me be martyred after that, but let this water reach Sakina. And soon his left arm is attacked and is indeed separated from him. When that happens, he moves the standard to his right hand, he moves the mishk to his right hand and moves on. Soon the right hand is also attacked, and that also is lost. How is Abbas now to do it? Look at the valiant fighter. He holds the banner, the standard of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This is so important to him, that the standard of Imam Hussein alayhi salam should still be straight. This is why when we take out the alam of Imam of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, that alam is always carried straight, because that is how Abbas always wanted that standard to be. He clenched it to his chest, and then what does he do with the mashk now? He clasped it in his teeth so that he moves on along with it, and Kerbala's arrow moves out right onto that mashk. When that mashk is pierced and water drops, Abbas alayhi salam looks at that water dropping, says, oh Allah, if that is your wish, if that is your will. But before he recovers, an attack on his head, and now he falls on the ground. Don't ask me how to fall on the ground. You need your arms to keep on the ground. He falls on his ground and turns to the, but before he does so, he turns round and goes away from the camp, because he sees no reason for moving to the camp, calls the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam picks up the two arms and reaches Abbas alayhi salam, and the wasiyah he makes is, oh my master, don't take my body to the camp. The Imam says, I've taken all bodies to the camp, why not yours? He says, I'm so ashamed to Sakina. I promised to bring her water. I have failed in that scheme. If I see Sakina and she looks at me and says, uncle, you haven't brought water, what reply will I give to her? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.